So as usual, we start off with a prayer. Om Shri Rama Rama Ramiti Rame Rame Manurame Sahasranama Tatulyam Ramanama Varanane. We delight in the beautiful name of Shri Rama again and again, for even once remembered, the name of Shri Rama bestows a fruit equal to 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. Of course, this is not just a poetic sentiment. The whole story that we've been telling and the drama that has been unfolding have shown the remarkable characters of all of the characters in the story. And of course, the most outstanding character would be Rama. This is not unusual, since we regard Rama from the very start as part of the beginning drama. Just to remind you how things started, they didn't start here on earth, they start in the heavenly regions. And they started because, as all dramas of this kind occur, where balance has to be restored, harmony has to be restored, there is the struggle against two opposing forces. In the physical world, in the cosmological world, we have these two struggles of gravitational energy pulling things in, electrical energy pulling things out, and we have good and bad, light and shade, and these are necessary parts. They're necessary parts of the human character, which immediately takes away any criticism of anybody, since, as Jesus put it, that he was first among you to throw the stones, he who without blemish, can cast the first stone. And so that is why we deal with things first. We deal with the first port of call. The first of our experiences is what we call ourselves, body, mind, and an inner essence, which we can call spirit. So where did we leave off so long ago? You'll recall that the trio, that is Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana, have now gone into the Dandaka forest area. This is the area which is now territory of the southern king, the king of Sri Lanka, Ravana. And we know that Ravana is the initial problem, and the Ravana was the problem way back in the heavenly discourse. There's a tyrannical person who's gotten incredible superhuman powers. Even though he's dedicated to lust and greed, the word is dedicated, and every thought movement that you make, that it materializes as our world in front. So where do we make it from? Where does the condensation come from? It comes from a cosmic mind that can be a cosmic balancing power also, and descends, as it were. And we use the term avatara, somebody who descends from a cosmic mind, as it were, if you put a hierarchy of beings in the universe, and comes down in our territory, as so-called, with our human capabilities, comprehensible to us, to act as a great example for the highest possible virtues and the highest noble attributes. Such a person was Rama. And the story is inspired, of course, by Valmiki's own experience. So, having wandered into the Dandaku forest, we can see how the roaming demoness, who happens to be Ravana's sister, is wandering around and sees these wonderful, wonderful heavenly individuals looking like angels descended, living the life of hermits and what have you, and yet armed with military weapons, bows and arrows and so on, and with a very noble bearing. And so the sister, whose name is Surpanaka, she's intrigued by this. And Ravana had made a garrison in the area of soldiers to protect his territory. And he'd put his cousins, Kara and Dushana in charge of this. And their sister, in fact, Surpanaka, who took advantage of the camp, freely rambled around And she was fairly advanced in age, actually, so the Valmiki tells us, and maybe not so good looking. She wouldn't have won, a prize for good looks necessarily. In other words, the archetypal or the archetypical uh, kind of demoness, if you will. But she, of course, had this one remarkable characteristic. She could transform her own appearance, even according to her own image, but let's assume that she could transform her own image. And though, where does this ugliness come from? It's not a physical ugliness that we're talking about. It's an ugliness of character, characterized by lust and jealousy and all the vices that we can think of that stop our own progress toward our own freedom. And lust was rampant in her. And so during a morning stroll, just to remind you, she chanced to sight the splendidly beautiful Rama and Lakshmana. And naturally, in her case anyway, lust came up, passion came up. And she thought, I'm going to marry at least one of these fellows, And so, though in the garb of the ascetics, which they were dressed in, the demoness found the virile youths living with an angel-like young woman. So not only was there lust, but there was also jealousy that arose. And that gave her the clue to hatch her passionate desire. And so she inquired, "Who are you?" This is the normal way to introduce yourself, no matter what. And Rama answers very courteously, as we should all do, in a friendly way. And he gives all the details about himself. And not only that, he tells her about Sita, about Lakshmana, and also gives the reason for his presence and their presence in the forest, the whole drama of the story that has gone before us, and in brief summary fashion. And so she's well informed. And who are you is the next question. So Surpanaka announces who she is, and straight away, unashamedly, says, "I'm attracted to Rama. I desire him," and abandoned the loathsome and lean Sita. She says, "This skinny woman, you can leave. I'm a much more wholesome woman, and they're very powerful, so you'll benefit by my presence. So, leave her and choose me as your wife, please." And then together they would delightedly, what would they do? They arranged together across the Dandaka forest. And of course, Rama doesn't take it seriously. He takes this as a kind of joke. He takes it in a good-humored way. Now we have to stop there and ask, when we are also faced with a challenge, do we take it seriously, or we did take it as a kind of sport and have a sense of humor? Because our first weapon that we have available to us as human beings is a sense of humor, to see things in a different light and make light of them. Somebody accuses you, or somebody directs some volatile vitriol against you. You take it and see the humor in it and reply in a humorous way. In this way, you can disarm somebody very quickly. And so he has a smile on his face. And he put it to her that he had his wife, he had his spouse living with him as Sita, and she might extend her proposal to Lakshmana, because Lakshmana was a bachelor. He's single. Don't ask him. He's not married. I'm married, I'm spoken for. But Lakshmana is a good-looking man. You can see muscular, and he's, has a royal bearing. Yeah, he'll be a good choice. And so the lust-pecked demoness then went and courted the younger brother, unashamedly, paying no heed to decorum, because she's confident that everybody thinks and operates as she does. That is, everybody wants greed, the expression of greed, power, and so on, and passionate lust and so on, that That's everybody must be like that. Since that's me, must be everybody. But you see, his rebuff was also with a sense of humor. Again, look, I'm just his younger brother. I'm just Rama's younger brother, and I'm attending on him as a servant. And you don't want to marry a servant, surely. The paragon of beauty that you are, he says. You're the most beautiful person, paragon of beauty. So flattery there, and flattery normally works with an egoistic person. Go and try again. Quote him again. I'm sure, persist, and you're likely to win his hand. Much better choice than me. And so the infatuated intruder mistakes this derision for high praise, as we all do. As we all do. Yes, you're really good looking and so on, boost somebody's ego, and it normally works for most people. And so she further hit upon a plan to make her offer effective. So supposing now, he said he's married and all that. So supposing I do away with this, in my opinion, scrawny woman living in the forest, because anybody who is blinded with ignorance and self-importance will see themselves as superior in the way they look, in the way they behave, and so on, in their prowess and power, than somebody who is genuinely beautiful. And the inner beauty shines. And we know how beautiful Sita was from previous descriptions in the court of her father, King Janaka. And so, supposing I do away with this slim creature of Sita, then my claim on Rama would become more important, more paramount. And so she makes a severe error. She pounces on Sita with a fatal design. But you see, Lakshmana, who has acted as a protector, viewing her as a kind of sister, and even the instruction, she's your mother, was quick enough to grasp the grave situation. And he springs on the sinister Surpanaka and snips off her nose and ears. Throughout the whole world, in medieval times and before, this was the ultimate humiliation. You cut your nose off so that your whole face is gone, pretty much. You can't smell anything, which means you can hardly eat anything also. And you cannot hear any scandal. So supposing we take away the senses other than the eyes being the most important one, we won't take those away from you. But you can't hear any scandal against you, and you can't respond, and your face is disfigured. And so did this instantly, instead of killing her, because he could have in defense of Sita. If Sita's life is in danger, then sometimes the option is to kill the other person. You must have watched all the cowboy movies where people shoot randomly at each other. That's upgraded to modern movies, in America, of course. So as the wounded woman was screaming in agony and hastening back to her quarters, the shrill of her agony and her humiliation is reverberating throughout the entire forest, and also the sound fading away, as sound does with distance. And she comes to the garrison and she relates her heartrending tale to Kara. And the two brothers together with a woman had transgressed into the forest. And that's what she says. What's wrong? Yeah, two brothers and a woman. They've actually transgressed. They've dared to come into our territory. How many wars and difficulties start because somebody says, oh, they've come into my territory? I always remember Ramakrishna's story of the two brothers fighting over land. Oh, it's my land, it's my land. And God intervenes and said, my dear fellows, it's actually my land. And I told this story at a university campus where there was a group of Israelis and Palestinians there And they asked me to facilitate one aspect of it. I told them the story. And such a simple story had such a high impact on them. Anyway, it was because of that woman, she says. Here's the problem. It's because that woman, that's the cause. You have to do away with her. It's because of that woman that the domicile sister of Kara was molested and mutilated, according to her. And in revenge, she would have them slain. Go take your army and slay all these 3 people, please. And in revenge, she would have them slain and would drink their blood. And Kara got infuriated over the mishap. How dare they, and what have you, and reacts. And so he orders 14 of his trained followers to go and slay the impudent intruders. After all, they're just 3 unarmed people against 14 armed warriors. And so Surpanaka accompanies them to witness the destruction. They hasten to the scene of the accident and want to go and do away with the offenders. But Rama remonstrated with them politely. He uses diplomacy first. And he points out, actually, it's not our fault. It was your sister, and he tells the whole story. And he remonstrates with them about the woman's misbehavior. And he advises the demons, just go and return in peace. We are peaceful people, peace-loving people. And actually this incident occurred, but it was your sister's misbehavior, not ours. But they proved themselves heedless, and when the action became necessary, then he exterminates them, leaving the culprit woman in herself. How, we can imagine, does Rama, with his bow and arrow, dispatch 14 well-armed and aggressive military people, leaving Surpanaka by herself? This is an interesting point of inquiry. We can't just accept the story. We have to understand what the weapons were which were used. Any weapon that you will use, Rama's weapon, his bow and arrow, is simply a symbol of his thought, because it's dispatched with a mantra. As we know, a mantra is a protecting thought. It is the most powerful tool that we have, because a mantra is not just a series of words, it's a kind of feeling, and that has the high impact. And so, with his seemingly small equipment, he dispatches whoever is there. And Surpanaka, she flies back to Kara and relates the fate of the able fighters. And Kara becomes even more enraged. So he calls his brother Dushana and the captain Trishira to take arms. And the huge army, they marched under their leadership. Now, this is all a summary repetition of where we were the last time, because we described comprehensively the terrible, terrible battle and bloodshed that ensued from there. And Rama understood the danger, and he asked his brother Lakshmana to take Sita into a cave nearby and to protect her. That's his role. Leaving Rama single-handedly to deal with the situation. And so he stands, bow in hand, looking and behaving in the most valiant way. And wave after wave of the demon forces charge against him from all directions. But something like moths perishing in a blazing flame, the onrushing hosts were being slain by the shafts ceaselessly darting from Rama's bow. We remember how he got such wonderful training under the very competent Vishwamitra, and how he managed to slay demons and demonesses with the reservation in his mind, is it right to kill a woman? Well, yes, if the woman is a demoness and wants to destroy you. And effectively, what is it? It's not about demons and demonesses. It's about the demons and demonesses in your own mind, your own lust, your own greed, your own sense of possession and power. Anyway, how do we combat these things in our own situation? We also take up the bow. We take up the arrow of discrimination, or the bow of discrimination, and the arrow of concentration. And we take up our mantra, and we then deal with all the assailing difficulties in life. And we will be successful, because thought is the most powerful thing that you have. It travels faster than the speed of light. Anyway, along with the multitude, Dushana falls slain, and Trishara also meets with the same fate. And lastly, there's a duel between Kara himself and Rama. And this last demon is also done to death. And so a miracle is noticed in Rama's action. And as I mentioned before, even atomic energy, which is inert, scorches the earth and exterminates all life. But psychic weapon was symbolized as Rama's arrow, weeds out the unwanted evil elements, only which are found harmful to society. Now, armies know this, but they distort it. So, for example, in the great wars of the last century, perhaps even contemporary wars, there are people, church people, dedicated to religion and religious practice, seemingly, who seem to represent God as a champion of one side or the other. And I think in heaven, God must be thoroughly confused. He got an email from one side, an email from another, declaring he got the champion. And I'm not sure what happens in heaven thereafter. So even this childish way of looking at it denies really the ultimate victory. The ultimate victory comes out of sincerity and truth and bravery as a result. Now, the person who escapes, one person managed to escape this on the demon's side. And that is where we're going to pick up the story from here on. So this chapter might be called the path of ruin, if you will, because things have gotten bad. Things go from bad to worse a little bit. You don't think that you've dispatched the problem and rest on your laurels. You have to be alert now, because we always have to be alert about what's going on in the mind. And Akampana, one of the few Rakshasas or demons who survived the great slaughter, he flees and he goes to Lanka, where Ravana is. And seeking the audience of Ravana, he says, almost all our people who occupied Janasthana, that is the military barracks, they're all dead. And Janasthana is now an empty ruin. I alone have managed to escape with life. But before he says it, he realizes one thing. The bearer of good news is unfortunate. Is fortunate. The bearer of bad news is unfortunate. Your own head is at risk, particularly with somebody who will fly into a rage. And so impulsion, all our difficulties comes from the impulsive nature. And so he makes a deal. He says, this is how it is, but, let me tell you the story. If you want to know exactly what happened, then please spare my life. I'm only the messenger. But anyway, when he was told, Ravana was furious with anger. Because you see, we're suffering from lust, anger, and greed, and also from, you see, the anger is thwarted desire, comes from thwarted desire, whichever way you look at it. And we know that psychologically, And we refer to Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga there, when he describes beautifully how a wave, a reactive wave in the mind comes up, and we are able to register anger is coming. And then it goes to such huge proportions, it occupies and swamps the whole mind, that we now identify with it and say, I am angry. Anyway, he stares and violently shouts, who destroyed my lovely Janasthana? Was it Yama or Agni or Vishnu? In other words, must have been a hugely powerful person with powerful resources at their disposal. I shall deal death to the god of death. This is how arrogant he is. Yama is the god of death. Mythologically speaking, Yama means control. How do we overcome death? By self-control. You can see the play on words. That is why in the Katha the entire Upanishad really is a Katha, a story, and Nachiketa really, dispatched to the realm of death, has a dialogue with death itself, because he's the expert on mortality, and therefore immortality also. And then Agni will be that aspect of divine grace and glory that is able to take all your thoughts and prayers and dispatch it to the highest source. Or Vishnu, the one that pervades everything. Technically, Vishnu means everything. Vishnu, the one that's pervading all, is in fact all. And so from a physics point of view, Vishnu is the entire observable universe and beyond. So he says, I shall deal death to the god of death. How can you do such a thing? He has this immense power. He's unconquerable, because that's his boon that he originally got from Brahma. All boons come from Brahma, because Brahma is cosmic mind. I shall burn up both the god of fire and the sun. Imagine somebody being so arrogant that they say, okay, I shall burn up the sun. Imagine somebody here with nuclear fusion capacity. Current nuclear plants are based on fission, not fusion. And it's one of the great scientific, technological researches to have at our fingertips fusion. And so far we haven't managed to do it properly or sustained it. Only a small flash, which is hugely expensive. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to burn up fire itself. I'm going to burn up the sun. I shall strangle and suffocate the god of wind. Tell me, who was it that destroyed this headquarters, this Janasthana, and killed my men, regardless and heedless that I am here, only for one purpose, to avenge? You must have known, if you destroyed it, that you're going to stir things up for me, and that I will not sit quiet. I'll seek revenge. So he demands, speak it out. And of course, as I mentioned before, it's dangerous to carry unpleasant news to a tyrant. And so Akampana was frightened, of course, and strikes the steel. I shall speak if you give me protection. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you who it was. I'll tell you how it happened. And I'm fortunate to be a survivor of it. Of course, the question arises, well, why aren't you also? Did you not perish? But anyway, he tells the tale. See, Rama is the son of Dasaratha. He's a young warrior. He's lion-like in fierce valor. He's a hero. And he's a hero who has already acquired fame among men. He fought with Kara, he fought with Dushana, and he destroyed them. The Rakshasa king, his reaction is, he hisses like a cobra and says, what are you talking? How did this happen? Did Indra and the divine hosts come down to earth and fight on Rama's side? Rama's, from what you say, is just a mere mortal, a mere man. And Akampana answers, well, no such thing happened, great king. But Rama stood alone against our whole army and its commanders and destroyed them all. I don't know how it happened. And Kara and Dushana, they were both slain. The deadly arrows issuing from Rama's bow were like five-headed serpents, and they pursued the demons, the Rakshasas, wherever they went, and they destroyed them. And he goes on to describe at length Rama's great skill, great speed in the use of his weapons. So, from a psychological point of view, what weapons do we have? We have weapons we're armed with: truth and beauty and love. We're armed with the capacity to be strong in the face of adversity, knowing that whatever we look at, we've come to one conclusion. It is either part of us or we're part of it, a totality, or we are one with it. This is the philosophical progression. And so Ravana, anyway, he learns that Dasaratha's son Rama, with his younger brother Lakshmana, was there, the Panchavati, and that he alone, without even his brother's aid, had done it all. Don't forget, Lakshmana is there protecting Sita. This is his only job. And that no deities, no superhuman beings, no gods had come to their aid at all. Indra remained Indra at home, unseen, wasn't there. Nobody came to his aid. Well, says Ravana, I really don't understand this, but I'm not even going to bother. I'm going to start at once. I shall destroy these little worms of men and I shall return. And he rose at that point. But Ankampana begs him, hear me, great king, before you go. And he explains once again Rama's strength and courage. Listen to me, no one can fight with Rama and conquer him. When I say no one, I mean no one. Not even you can do it, because you have promised me protection. Now you see that's a very dangerous thing, but protection has been promised. And so he adds, I dare to tell you the plain truth. There's only one way of killing him. His wife is with him, and the whole earth holds nobody equal in beauty to her. And this is where the trouble started. And if you contrive to carry her off, then the separation from her will kill Rama, simply because Rama and Sita are two sides of the same coin. Rama and Sita go together. We call it Sitaram. And when we chant, we say Sitaram. And if you take one half away, the other will be devastated. So, the whole earth holds her, doesn't hold her beauty equal to anybody. She's outstrips anybody in terms of her beauty, and her beauty comes from her purity. And if you contrive to carry her off, then separation will certainly kill Rama. So I'm suggesting a course of action here. So you need to consider not just stumbling into a battlefield, but you need to be a little bit more considerate, a little bit more wily. You have to plan things a little better. You have to be a little bit more subtle and consider how you can do this. Don't think of battle with him. That technique is not going to work. And so when Ravana hears of Sita's beauty, in addition to everything else, his desire is kindled. Now he wants not just to dispatch the problem area, but he wants to capture Sita. That is the absolute jewel, and lust takes over. So he begins to think that the defeat of Kara and his hosts was indeed actually a fortunate event. It's brought him an opportunity for gaining somebody who's more beautiful than any of his queens, and a more beautiful queen and wife he couldn't gain. And so he welcomes Akampana's advice and says, all right, tomorrow morning I shall go, and I think your plan is a good one. So accordingly, you see now his mood is settled down, but it's replaced. His outward impulsiveness is now replaced by lust. And so accordingly, Ravana sets out on his mule-yoked flying chariot which gleamed like the moon among the clouds as it sped fast in the air. Now, I always remember one great expert on this Ramayana. My Upaguru, Swami Purnananda, was a great, great expert in this Ramayana. And so I always remember him saying, with regard to historicity, he interprets this word Vimana as some kind of low-flying aircraft, referring to the fact that this is itihasas. It is such an important component of the story. He says we cannot relegate it to myth. It's part of history. And also remarks that many things mentioned in these histories are really, indicate more advanced civilizations than we would have thought. So this is the Vimana. It's a flying chariot of some kind. And although it says it's mule yoked, I think that part of it we have to take a little skeptically. We have to take it as part of the mythological phase inserted into the story, not understanding the technology that they may well have had in those days. Anyway, we're told it gleamed like the moon among clouds, and it speeds quickly in the air, and he goes straight to Maricha's dwelling. Now, who is Maricha? Well, Maricha, let us say, duly welcomes his king and inquires what urgent necessity has brought him there. Ravana answers, "Hear me, Maricha. You and you alone can help me. Janasthana has been destroyed, and so too the whole army, and I had stationed there. And all this is the work of Rama, son of Dasaratha. Isn't it amazing? And so to avenge myself, I resolved to carry off his wife. So I need your help, and I need your advice." Now, Maricha, whose experience of Rama's prowess had seared into his soul, was horrified and tried to dissuade Ravana from his mad enterprise. If you recall, Maricha was there in the forest in the very beginning. Maricha was a demon, part and parcel of a whole cohort of demons harassing holy people. And he got horribly defeated. So he knows, he has experience of this. Anyway, he asks, what plan is this? Some enemy determined to destroy you, but pretending to be your friend, has given you this plan of carrying off Sita. I'm not recommending it. Whoever gave you this advice wishes the end of the Rakshasa race. And it's like advising you to put your hand into the mouth of a sleeping cobra and pull out its fang. Haven't you a happy home and devoted wives? You sit quietly, enjoy that, leave things alone. Return to them, enjoy your life and prosperity. To hanker after Rama's wife is the highway to disgrace and destruction and the annihilation of the Rakshasa race. And this, in the same way, to make a strategy, a life strategy compiled of the mother of all difficulties, that is ignorance, and to engage our vices of hankering for power, greed, and all the rest of it, resorting to revenge and so on. This will not really work. The Mundaka Upanishad gives this wonderful phrase now as part and parcel of the motto of the country of India, Satyam eva jayati, that is, truth alone will triumph. And recently there was Republic Day. And so you see, truth alone triumphs is a great, great motto because it's been gathered from all of these experiences and stories of the past. And it is certainly a truth itself. Now, Ravana is described as having 10 heads because Ravana represents the worst in us, and the worst in us comes out because of our orientation toward our own psychophysical makeup, where we have 10 senses, five organs of information, and 5 organs of reaction. Jnanendriyas, that is, organs of knowledge. Karmendriyas, that is, organs of action. And actually every organism, whether it be a single cell organism or anything else, has this same action-reaction that is discovered, that is understood and known about. And the science of studying this has been called epigenetics. We know that the intelligence in a cell does not lie in its nucleus. It's on the surface, on the skin, where the senses are. It's able to assess an environment, bring in what it requires, relay that to mechanisms that regulate behavior, and come out as a reaction. This is true for every organic creature. And so Ravana is seen to have 10 heads, that is emphasizing the sense nature that we have. And he goes back to Lanka, having visited Maricha. And Maricha's counsel appeared to set him on a more of a balanced, harmonious way of thinking. It's settled him. He's now become more thoughtful about it. It's calmed his impulsive and raw nature, his rough nature. After all, he's a king. And so he has some sensitivity and some sensibility also. He's not all the time out of control. And of course, Ravana must have remembered the mission of the series of boons given to him by Brahma, because if you recall, he got boons as protection. Nobody can conquer him who is, equal to him in power, for example. But it doesn't apply to men, to mere mortals. And so he had obtained immunity from the attacks of all beings, except human beings, except men. And Rama's shafts had conquered and killed the whole army with Karan, Shishiras, and Dushana, and other mighty warriors. And so thinking of all of this now, Ravana accepts Maricha's advice for the time being. But you see, fate. What is fate? A series of unforeseen circumstances that come into our area all the time. It wouldn't let him be. And Ravana was seated on his throne with his counselors around him. And majesty shone on his face like a sacrificial flame fed with ghee. And his mighty body showed the scars of many wounds received in victorious battles against gods, against asuras, against demons, against devas and others, beings that we know of and beings we don't know of in parallel universes. And his strength and courage were limitless. So was his adharma, his behavior that upsets the harmony of things. And he had no equal in persecuting the devas. He was expert in taking these forces of good and squeezing them. And he was doing this, spoiling their sacrifices, the machinery that makes things harmonious, and carrying away women. And the hosts of devas and asuras were mortally afraid of him. He was a terror to all creatures, enjoying wealth and varied pleasures, freed from the fear of death. The ruler of Lanka knew no master or rival and feared neither God nor sin. But history tells us the fate of such a person. I was talking to somebody, I think, the other day about Alexander the Great. Such a great emperor, such a great military person, defeating soldiers just through strategy, even though he was outnumbered. But in a fit of pique, he killed his best friend, who saved his own life. And he destroyed a whole city. The whole Persian city was a wonder of the world at the time, and regretted afterwards his impulse. Was he therefore a deva or an ashura? History will judge him to be in the category of demonic, and yet we call him Alexander the Great. So he had some pluses and minuses. and his desire to conquer the world. So we find that these great characters, historical characters, are a mix, really, a temperamental mix of good and bad. And they have overall the capacity to conquer all the forces in front of them and to create terror amongst them, because there's nobody equal. So he was a terror to all creatures, enjoying wealth and varied pleasures. Freed from the fear of the death, the ruler of Lanka knew no master or rival and feared neither God nor sin. And if you're confused where Lanka is, well, it's current Sri Lanka. So with his 10 heads, large eyes, and huge limbs, his figure was terrible, but it also possessed the marks of royalty as well. And he was gorgeously dressed and bejeweled as he sat on his throne, surrounded by all his ministers in the midst of the splendor of the despoiled world. And there suddenly, all of a sudden appeared before him, like the vision of the doomed to be, his sister, Surpanaka, bleeding, mutilated, no nose, no ears, a shape of pain and sorrow and shame. And while everyone looked at her with horror-struck eyes in stunned silence, his anguish now broke out in burning words, and it revived his original hatred and his desire for revenge. What a fool are you that sunk in sensual pleasures and arrogantly secure sovereignty, is what she's saying. You're not awake to the deadly danger that threatens your existence at your very doors. Surely that king who is drunk with self-importance and dead to all the portents, all the unfortunate signs around you that threaten his state, is doomed to shame and destruction. And no object is of less account or more contemptible than a ruler who falls through his own remissness. So she talks. So know that not that your brothers, Kara, Dushana, and Trisuras, and your gallant army of 14,000 fierce Rakshasas have been exterminated by Rama, a mere man. Do you know all of this? And that your outpost, this Janasthana, has been destroyed. One moment, I saw a single warrior stand proud in the glittering pageantry of war, and the next, they lay dead. They lay dead, stained by that man's arrows, slain by that man's arrows, strewing the ground like ripe crops devastated by a terrible hailstorm. And you see me, your own sister, disgraced, mutilated, heartbroken. Don't you have any thoughts of vengeance? Won't you avenge me? You're a hero, you're my brother, you're a king. And stung by her contempt for him, and heart-struck by her suffering and sorrow, Ravana said, "Be sure you shall have vengeance. But this Rama, who is he? What sort of man is he? What are his weapons? How does he fight? And what does he want to look for? What is he looking for in Dandaka forest, my territory? And how does he happen to be there? And how happened it that you were so cruelly mutilated? How did this all occur?" And so she gives a full description of the brothers and Sita, dwelling on the virile beauty and powers of the brothers, probably with a view to provoke the envious jealousy of the Rakshasas. See her argument. I think they've come to provoke us. And growing enthusiastically eloquent about the superlative loveliness of Sita, his lust grows again. She says, "I have no words to describe her perfections. I've never, ever seen such a sublime beauty in any created thing, be it in the Gandharva, that is the celestial musicians, or Kinara, or daughter of a man. In no being have I come across. And now I will tell you why this ghastly outrage was perpetrated on me. See, when I saw Sita, I felt that none but you deserved her. I wanted her for you." See the distortion of truth. And that she was fully worthy to share your bed. And out of my love for you, I tried to carry her off for you. And this, her brother-in-law Lakshmana, who was standing by, he prevented it. And springing on me for no apparent reason, disfigured and disgraced me. And for your sake, all of this I have suffered. And if you wish to avenge this insult and protect the honor of the race, then please rise and go at once. And apart from revenge for the insult I have suffered, secure for yourself a wife worthy of you, outstripping any of your queens, a beautiful gem, a beautiful prize. And if you capture her and disgrace Rama, the spirits of the warriors who were slain in Dandaka would then be satisfied. It's all be for a good cause. And I too shall feel that some amends have been made for the absolute humiliation and dishonor that has been done to me. You don't know your own strength. Now a different tactic. All the tactics of stimulating, motivating somebody. You can easily secure Sita and make her your own. Just people, just men. And can you remain indifferent to the insult of your race, to your race? Kara and Dushana lie dead in Janasthana because they dared to oppose this man Rama. Think of all this and do what is right. See, in the name of justice and right, she's trying to persuade him. Save, oh save the honor of our race. It's a matter of honor. And you can see throughout history the false justification for wars that have taken place. And listening to these words of his sister and her praise of Sita's beauty, Ravana dissolves the council and retires to muse alone. And he had to think and think again. You see, every king will require a council of wiser people and normally will listen to them. But now, how to do away with their counsel, do what he really wants to do. You just dissolve all your advice and you now work on your own. And so he had to think and think again because he remembered what Maricha had told him. And he turned over his mind all the pros and cons, and finally he comes to a decision and orders a chariot to be kept ready in secrecy. And so it was ready, and his golden chariot, that is his Vimana, his sky chariot, his low-flying device, bearing demon faces. Mounting it, he passes over sea and land and cities, and he looks from his magic chariot at the sights of the summer season down below, and his passion grew stronger. So he reaches Maricha's ashram and meets Maricha once again. And Maricha has his matted hair and bark garments. He lived now as a life of an ascetic. And seeing his king and kinsman, his relative, Maricha welcomes Ravana duly and says, "What have you come all this way a second time, and also unannounced?" And Ravana, skillful in speech, he began, "I am in great trouble, and from which only you can save me, and I beg you for your help." He's now come down and is simulating humility. "I beg you for help. Do you know how my brothers under my orders ruled Janasthana, and how they and their warriors knew no opposition all these years, and we held on to this territory in the Dandaka forest? But now this man, Rama, has killed them and also their whole army, and without a chariot and standing on the ground, his arrows have pierced to death all our kinsmen. And today in the Dandaka forest, rid of Rakshasas are no longer found in this forest. Only the rishis live there, fearless lives, because our job was to raid them and harass them." You know, in my own Zimbabwe, people think that intruders came. Yes, there was a tribe from South Africa who came and dominated the local peaceful tribes there. And when I read this, I can think of the peaceful life of the rishis being upset by the warrior-like attitudes of these new invaders. And they themselves have, been unwilling immigrants moving up to better possibilities, viewing everything that belongs to them. So everybody in their way becomes a slave, and they dominate in a cruel way and possess whatever things they have. So we can see this historically is something that is true. We can see how somebody invades somebody's land. We can see how they dominate the people, and we can see how they manufacture some excuses. Generally, we call this colonialism. And then the rhetoric continues. This Rama is a worthless prince banished by his father, no doubt, for some crime he must have committed. And he's been wandering in the forest alone with his wife. And his wife is named Sita, the one born from a furrow. And this fellow, dressed like an ascetic but enjoying sense pleasures, this renegade from Dharma, proud of his strength and for no other reason, has mutilated the face of my sister and insulted our whole race. And my sister has suffered this pain and shame, has come and complained to me. And if with all this I sit still and do nothing, then would I still be king? How will people think of me? If this comes to public knowledge, as surely it must have by now. So I have to avenge myself. I have decided to carry off Rama's wife from the Dandaka forest, and I have decided to disgrace and punish this Rama. And it's a duty that I owe my whole race. So these words of any skillful politician are being told. And I need your help, because with you to help, I have no fear. Encourage strength, skill, and magic powers. There's no one on earth that can equal you. You have the power of transforming forms, your own form. And that's why I've come to you. And you can't refuse me. I will take you, I will tell you how you can help me. Here's the plan. You should turn yourself into a golden deer. You have that power to transform yourself, your form. A golden deer with silver spots, casting a spell on all eyes. And if you, in this form, would romp in the forest in front of Sita, near Rama's ashram, then I know the character of women, so he's also a sexist. She will insist on Rama and Lakshmana pursuing and capturing you for her. And when they are thus engaged, then she'll be left alone, and I surreptitiously will come, and I will also disguise myself. I'll easily carry her off. Because Sita, by all accounts, from what I've heard, is the most beautiful woman. And Rama, losing such a wife, will surely languish in sorrow and lose his manly spirit. And it will then be easy to kill him and avenge ourselves, because he'll be completely, absolutely demoralized. And Maricha stares at Ravana, his face becoming pale, his mouth grows parched. He was frightened by Ravana's plan. And with his experience of Rama's prowess and his own wisdom, born of penance, Maricha sees what was going to happen. So we leave it there. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.